Hi, everybody. Today is October 28th or October 29th. Welcome back, and we are going to go over the slideshow at this time. So I'm going to put it in presentation mode. So when you came into class today, you should have worked on the Jeopardy game for a little bit to review symbolism. Remember, a symbol is something, an object or an item that represents something else. And allegory is a little deeper understanding of that symbol itself, and sometimes it can kind of be like a moral to the story. So one thing I wanted to mention is the other day you did the ticket out the door as a little quiz when we read or we watched a little cartoon of tortoise and hare. And you looked at symbolism in that, with the tortoise being just known as to be slow and the hare as a quick and kind of arrogant type of animal. And then the allegory of that story or cartoon was slow and steady wins the race. So you're combining the symbols to the thought of allegory. Then we read and listened to the book The Sneetches, and you had the symbol of the star being showing superiority or significance and doing an excellent job. And then you had to take that symbol and relate it to kind of a moral of the story, which is kind of allegory, deeper meaning of that symbol, which a lot of you got that nobody's better than others, and relating that to even a deeper allegory of meaning of racism and prejudice. So on that ticket out the door, you had the literal interpretation of a text as part of understanding allegory. And then I said, what is literal interpretation? So it's obviously not the front part of the back of the couch. A poetic element found in Shakespeare's plays would be called a soliloquy. It's when you kind of talk to the audience on the side. Mimes use literal interpretation, so we don't know what they are imagining. That's not true because they don't say any words. So literal interpretation is looking only at the words for intended meaning, not trying to figure out what the words mean. So literal is just what the words mean exactly on the page. So that was probably one question that a few people got wrong on the ticket out the door. So that was graded for 5 points the other day. Today we're going to talk about Grammar 101, Mod 5. We'll watch a subject complement 7-minute video, and then object complements, looking at an ed puzzle. Then I'm going to talk about the Scarlet Ibis. In this story, we're going to look more at allegory with the use of symbolism, and that's more of a 9th grade story. Then if we have time, we're going to do a little practice Quizlet and Kahoot for a test coming up next week. And then reminder that Grammar 101 Mod 5 is due November 13th. You should be reading your independent reading book. You have one book report due at the end of the term. And that book report is due on November 25th. And then you're working on your weekly reading doc, parts 7 through 9, and you will be submitting that by November 13th. Okay, so we also have a Google Meet this Friday. It's not optional, so please join me for Google Meet Friday. All right, I'm going to back this up a little bit, and we'll watch the subject complement video at this time.
Hello, Grammar World. This is a video about subject complements. It is one of a 2-part video series detailing complements, subject and verb complements. This one clearly about subject complements. And let's right begin. Subject complements complete the meaning of a linking verb. Linking verb. So, just like I said in the other video, if you're trying to figure out what type of complement you're dealing with, the very first thing that you have to figure out is what type of verb you are dealing with. So a subject complement comes in two flavors. The first type we're going to call predicate nominative. Nominative. That's an M. Nominative. And this comes from the root word nomen, which means name, which is where we get the term noun from, because a noun names something. So a predicate nominative names what the subject is. So it's going to be connecting, the verb is going to be connecting the subject to a noun or pronoun. We'll see some examples in a second. The other type is called a predicate adjective. This one's a lot more straightforward because predicate adjectives describe nouns. So a predicate adjective is a verb that is when a linking verb links a subject to an adjective that describes something about that subject. So this one's usually a lot easier for students, but we just described this one is PA and this one is PN. All right, let's look at some examples. So I am the teacher. So am is the linking verb here, and it is going to be linking I, the subject, to teacher. Now, teacher is a noun, and we know it's a noun because the is modifying it. Anything that the modifies is going to be a noun. That is the nature of an article. So, because we know this is a noun, it is a predicate nominative. It is naming what I am. So, I am the teacher. And again, from the linking verbs video, you might recall that you can think of a linking verb as an equal sign. So I equal teacher, right? That's what it is. The students were excited. Were is the linking verb here, and it is linking students, the subject, to the state of being excited, which is an adjective. So this is a predicate adjective. Again, you're essentially saying students equal excited. That's what you're essentially saying with a linking verb, is linking these two things. Now, this next sentence is in here for a specific purpose. When you are dealing with complements, one thing that complements are not are prepositional phrases. So if you wrote off to the side here, prepositional phrases or phrase does not equal object, right? Does not equal complement, if you will. So we can take out a prepositional phrase to make life a little easier with anticipation. So they became restless. Now we have a three-word sentence, much easier. Became is the linking verb, linking they, the subject, to the state of being restless, which is an adjective. So we're dealing with a predicate adjective. Around the classroom, the students remain seated in their chairs. So because we know prepositional phrases cannot be complements, let's just take them out the very first thing. So around the classroom, the students remain seated in their chairs. So we're just left with the students remain seated, and this is a much easier sentence to deal with. So remained is the linking verb, right? And then it's going to be linking the subject, which is students, to the adjective of seated. It's describing the students. They are in the state of being seated. So it is a predicate adjective.
Okay, so as you can see from the video, and this deals with your Grammar 101, as you can see here in this video, the subject complement is either a predicate noun type, so a predicate noun. Again, subject complements use linking verbs like is, are, was, were, and the predicate noun type links what the subject is. So I am the teacher was the example. I is the subject, am is the linking verb, and then teacher describes, so it's a predicate noun, a PN. On the other hand, predicate adjectives, they are using linking verbs in the sentence as well, because that's what subject complements do, and they link verbs that describe the subject or the verb. So an example, the students were happy. Students is the subject, were is the linking verb. What were the students? They were happy. So that's a describing word. So that's an adjective. And lastly, complements are not in a prepositional phrase. In a prepositional phrase, they are words like it, in, over, under. They're kind of like a place where a cat can go. And they end in a noun, around, between. So that is a little example using subject complements for lesson 9. Now we're going to look at object complements for lesson 10. We're going to look at an ed puzzle together. And as soon as that ed puzzle comes up, okay, so object complements. Different than subject complements.
Object complements. Just like subjects can have complements, words that complete their meaning, so too can objects. An object complement is a word that identifies or describes the direct object. So your sentence order would look like this.
So now you have to go back and find the DO, the direct object, to find these kinds of objects.
Subject, verb, direct object, object complement. Here are some tips to finding them in a sentence. They will always appear after the direct object. They will be a noun or pronoun.
And remember, to find the direct object, you have to say the verb and what or whom.
Or an adjective. And they will answer the question, what? Let's see if we can find them in the following sentence. St. Mary's elected Sarah president of the parish council. Remember that in a sentence that has a direct object, you have to have a transitive action verb. And we do. Elected. St. Mary's is our subject. So using our direct object questions, we ask, St. Mary's elected whom? Sarah. Sarah is the direct object. Notice that the word president immediately follows the word Sarah. Because president is a noun that identifies the direct object Sarah, it is said to complement Sarah. It is an object complement noun. Here's another example.
Let's move back to transitive verb. That is used with an object, and it's a noun, phrase, or pronoun that refers to the person or thing that's affected. So it's kind of like an action word, sort of.
Coach called Harold annoying.
Again, you have called here, so that was a transitive verb.
Subject is coach, and the transitive action verb is called. Coach called whom? Harold. Harold is your direct object.
So you say the verb called, and then you say what or whom. So whom, Harold, so that's your DO. And now you're looking for the object complement.
Coach called Harold what? Annoying. Since annoying describes the direct object Harold, we call it an object complement adjective. Here's one more example.
And that's because it's not in the subject part. It's not describing the first part, the whatever that was, the fans or whatever back here, the coach. Okay, so it's not describing the coach. It's describing Harold, so it's part of the object, not part of the subject. That's why it's an object complement.
Here's one more example. The fans named Ryan Braun their favorite player in 2011. Fans is the subject. Named is the transitive action verb.
Because they do that.
Fans named whom? Ryan Braun.
Direct object.
In this sentence, Ryan Braun is your direct object. But the idea seems incomplete without the object complement. Named Ryan Braun what? Named him player.
Okay, so just player.
While the complete idea is their favorite player, it still remains that we have an object complement noun in this sentence?
Okay, so that was a little review of object complements. Again, they have to have a direct object and it has to have a transitive verb. So transitive verbs are kind of like action verbs. And they are found, the object complement is found in the predicate part of the sentence. Okay, so that was object complement. All right, now we're going to move on to the scarlet ibis. So I'm going to go over a little bit of discussion and notes, and then you'll be listening to it on the audio, trying to figure out the symbolism and the allegory in the story. So just look up front for a moment here. You don't have to open up the story yet. But in the scarlet ibis, this is just a little, I have a feeling a lot of you maybe don't know what an ibis is. You might know that scarlet is the color red. So in the scarlet ibis, let's see if I can get this to go bigger. In the scarlet ibis, oops, let me get rid of that little plus that I accidentally put in there. The ibis is a kind of bird. There's like 20 species of this bird. And it's long-legged water bird. It's related to the heron. That's like a crane and stork. The ibis eats plants, small shellfish, and mollusks. Its ancient Egyptians worshipped the ibis of northern Africa. It's a relative of the scarlet ibis of the story. So consider this quote. Predict how the relationship between the two brothers might affect the story. At times I was mean to Doodle. One day I took him up to the barn loft and showed him his casket, telling him how we all believed he would die. Okay, so there's two brothers in this story, obviously, because it just said that. And what do you think that kind of quote what does that mean about the brothers if one boy says to the other, at times I was mean to Doodle? So I is first person, so the person in the story is telling the story. One day I took him up to the barn loft and showed him his casket, telling him how we all believed he would die. Obviously, if you predict that, that brother or boy, or he's kind of mean to his brother to tell him that. After the selection, or about the selection, the scarlet ibis reveals that cruelty and selfishness can be entwined with love. Motivated by pride and self-interest, the narrator helps his disabled brother learn to walk and swim. So he's actually really, really pretty nice to him sometimes. Not satisfied, the narrator pushes for more. Only later does the narrator realize the depth of his feelings for his brother. Okay, I don't want to go over the symbol and the allegory yet because I want you to try to figure out the symbol and allegory in the story. So I'm going to move back here. Keeps wanting to forward on me. I want to look at a few notes that you need to know for your benchmark test. So if you would just continue to look up to the front. Okay, so we're going to look at a few notes for benchmark 4. Okay, so a few of these things will be on your test for your bigger test in about a week and a half. So characterization is words, actions describing a character's traits and personality. So it's how the character acts and how people treat him or her, or what they say or do. Direct characterization is when the narrator tells the readers directly about the character. It's straight out, tells it exactly. Indirect, you have to figure out the character through their actions, words, and thoughts. Symbolism is something represents something else. Daffodils in the spring may represent a sign of new life. A dove may represent peace. Red may represent death. Green, rebirth, or like even the sunset. Not only that it could be a symbol of a day is done, but a sunset can be an allegory for the ending of life, the ending of the day, death. Allegory is ideas indirect in a story, deeper meaning. For example, in the Sneetches, the allegory is about racism, one thinking they're better than the other. Cause and effect relationships was another topic we've talked about. When one event or situation produces another. So because of this, this happens. You misplace your car keys, therefore the car won't start, for example. So that is cause and effect. When you look at formatting in text, which we will next week, you look at headings, subheadings, labels, or graphics. These features help find things easier. So like when we use the Upfront magazine. And lastly, the content of text would be like the main idea, the evidence, supporting ideas, and questions that appear at the end of the text. So we'll look at some of those things next week using the Upfront magazine. Okay, so at this time, let me make this in presentation mode so you can see it a little bit better. We did a little bit of notes review for the benchmark test. We reviewed symbolism and allegory, and I introed the story, The Scarlet Ibis. So at this time, I want you to open up the Scarlet Ibis story. It's found on Schoology. So get out your computer, and you need to go to the fiction, nonfiction folder and find the Scarlet Ibis. Okay, so go to fiction, nonfiction, find fiction folder because Scarlet Ibis is in there. Okay, find fiction folder. Whoops, I went to independent reading. Okay, so go to fiction, nonfiction, and then you will be looking for fiction stories because the Scarlet Ibis will be found in there, and open up the Scarlet Ibis story. I'll play the audio. It's 23 minutes long. You're going to be thinking about what is the symbolism of the story and what is the allegory of the story. We'll discuss that afterwards. And then you will have a little quiz online on the story. So open up the story to this point. I'm going to stop my video here. When we finish the story, we'll look at the symbolism and allegory, take a little quiz online, and then it will be time to either finish up some grammar or time to go. So let me stop the video here, open, I'll get the audio, and then we'll move on.